Hello everybody and welcome back to another Walking Dead video. And today we're doing my top 10 best Walking Dead episodes. And this was really hard to make because there's so many good episodes. And I had to really think about this. I thought it would be an easy one to make, but no. I had so many episodes, it took me so long to whittle it down to just 10. But I eventually got there, and my kind of criteria to make this top 10 is that this episode needs to be rewatchable and needs to be living rent-free in my head. So let's jump right into this and talk my 5 honorable mentions that almost made it on my list. And we have Season 6, Episode 12, Season 6, Episode 16, Season 10, Episode 22, Season 5, Episode 3, and Season 3, Episode 4. And these were so hard to be like, okay, they're not going to be on the list, especially Season 6, Episode 16. And the only reason that isn't number 10, it was almost number 10, is solely because of the ending, which completely ruins it for me. And that really doesn't make me want to go rewatch it, so it kind of is like pushed out from my criteria. But now let's jump right into this and talk about 10th place. And in 10th place is Season 4, Episode 8. And this is the ending of the prison/governor arc. And this episode is so good. It's very action-packed. And the death of Herschel is so good. It's so iconic, that liar scene where he slits Herschel's throat. It's such a good episode, and it had to be on this list. This episode just ends the governor/prison arc on such an amazing way, on such a high, with our characters barely surviving. Rick barely survives this, and it does also tease, which doesn't happen, the death of Judith, which leaves it with a very sad ending. And this episode is amazingly acted. I will mention this a couple of times, especially episodes with Andrew Lincoln in. He definitely improves the episode massively. Number 9 is Season 11, Episode 24, the final episode. And of course this was going to be on this list. I absolutely loved the final episode. I think there was a few small things which I thought kind of sucked a little and the pace was a little off. However, this episode really stuck the landing with the ending of The Walking Dead. It looks amazing, it sounds amazing. This episode was also able to make our character feel like they were going to die, especially the ones that didn't have spin-offs coming. Go into this episode, you just feel like, okay, every character can die. And especially in the later seasons, that you never got that feeling. So it's great that we got that feeling again, and it really improves the episode, so it has to be on this list. Number 8 is Season 3, Episode 12, and this is the episode where we meet Morgan again. And Lenny James and Andrew Lincoln are so good together. It's a shame both actors left the show because those two characters need to reunite, and in this episode we see them reunite for the first time since episode 1 of Season 1. And Morgan being this crazy clear man is so entertaining. It's such a good episode to see what Morgan has become and Rick reacting to that, but also the side plot with Michonne and Carl is really good at developing both of those characters, so there's no real negatives of this episode. Number 7 is Season 4, Episode 14, and this is the Look of the Flowers episode / The Grove. And this episode is such a very good character development episode for Tyrese and Carol, and the iconic ending that just lives rent-free in my head for almost a decade at this point is the Look at the Flowers. And that's a moment that I just tell people about. If someone's never watched The Walking Dead, I would be like, go watch this specific episode, because it's such a good character development episode. It's not a big explosive episode, which is what The Walking Dead turned into in the later seasons. This episode is focused very much on Carol and her having to lose yet another child, and it's so well acted. And this is when I really liked Carol. It's a shame what happened to her in the later seasons, but back in those seasons, every episode she was in was gold. Number 6 is Season 6, Episode 9, and this is No Way Out. We have to put this on this list because it's No Way Out. And No Way Out is definitely one of the best arcs that the show has done. It was a shame this couldn't be higher because they did split No Way Out over 2 episodes. Episode 8 and Episode 9, if there were one episode, this would have been way higher, maybe in the top 2 or even top 3, but no. It was made 2 episodes, but still, this is still an amazing episode. This episode has that iconic Carl getting shot in the eye moment, and Rick basically going full crazy and inspiring everyone to kill the walkers. It is such a good episode, and it really takes its time to end No Way Out with our characters spending the episode on literally death's door, with our characters surrounded by walkers on all fronts, and even inside the walker horde trying to survive / escape Alexandria. All the plots are very interesting. The prime one is definitely the best, with Carl and Rick and their group trying to walk through the horde, but the Carol one and all the little subplots with Owen the Wolf are all absolutely fantastic. This episode is such a good way to end the first half of The Walking Dead, with the walkers no longer being the threat of the show, and No Way Out hit that purpose. It's such a good episode and deserved to be here. Now, in 5th place is Season 4, Episode 16. And this is definitely one of the best season finales we've ever got, because we get a very good wrap-up to the current story we have. All the characters meet up, minus Carol and Tyrese. We get Crazy Rick / Beard Rick, or Red Machete Rick, whatever you call him. He is born in this episode. We get the iconic scene where Rick bites a man's jugular off because they threatened his family. Absolutely amazing. And we meet Terminus for the first time, and that ending where Rick is slowly putting together what happened to his other remaining group. When he's looking around, he's like, okay, I recognize that. These guys killed them. We need to get out of here. It's so genius. And that iconic ending. It might not be as iconic depending where you are in the world, because in America, they bleeped it, but in the UK, we had the first kind of big F-bomb on The Walking Dead there. Insert the F word with the wrong people. And I remember seeing that and being like, bruh, this is going to get serious. And that is such a good way to end one of the best seasons on The Walking Dead. We also get flashbacks to during the prison arc, where we see Herschel for the final time, really, not counting his cameo in season 9. It's overall a very strong episode, and it is mostly about developing Rick to become more a Shame-like character, and setting up Carl going darker, even though they never do anything with it. They definitely set up Carl getting his comic storyline in this episode, and it really works. Now, in 4th place is Season 7, Episode 1. And this episode was almost 3rd place, or 2nd place. I really struggle with these top 4. And Season 7, Episode 1 is such a good episode. Like, some people might be like, this could just have been added on to Season 6, Episode 16. But yes, it could have. But standalone, this episode is one of the most goriest episodes we've got on The Walking Dead. We lose 2 amazing, massive characters, which make the show so much better. I love when the show kills off big characters like that. But the big shining thing about this episode that made it this high for me is Andrew Lincoln's performance. This is definitely his best performance on The Walking Dead, or in general. Breaking Rick down throughout the entire episode is perfect, and Jeffrey D. Morgan is probably his most villainous in this episode than compared to everything else. He's not a very good villain overall, but in this episode, he is definitely one of the best villains, the way Jeffrey D. Morgan portrays him. Just the acting is outstanding between those two. And that scene where Rick has to cut off Carl's arm before Negan stops him, just perfect. Like, in the comics, this is a very brief thing where he smashes Glenn's head in and leaves. But in the show, they really took their time to see how this breaks Rick, and it is so good. Number 3 is Season 9, Episode 15, and this is the Fair episode. And this episode just absolutely broke me. And that mostly happened because I really, really liked Henry. I know some people didn't like the deaths in this episode because they weren't big like in the comics. In the comics, we lost Rosita and Ezekiel, but in this, we lost some smaller characters. However, if you liked any of those characters, you were destroyed. The big moment of this episode is the Pikes, and it does help so much that this entire season builds up to the fair. Like, oh, I can't wait for the fair. And then you get to this episode, and you have Alpha sneaking around, doing something shady, and you see lots of red herrings of Alpha walking off with Ezekiel, or this and that. And it really puts you on edge this entire episode to see the Pikes. And all of those deaths were so good. The music's perfect. The acting is perfect. The outstanding bit is definitely when Carol sees Henry and Daryl runs over, and the music and Daryl like frantically trying to get Carol not to look, to pan over to Henry. Definitely one of my favourite moments in The Walking Dead. That has to be my favourite Walking Dead moment, the Pikes. And because of that, it just had to be on this list. I just really, really love this episode. And I frequently go back to watch the ending because the ending is one of the best endings for an episode we've got on The Walking Dead. Now, number 2 is Season 5, Episode 1. And this is how you open a season. The best season opening we've ever got. This episode is just off the walls. We get Rambo Carol. We have Machete Rick in full sway. Like we had the last one, the birth of Machete Rick. This episode is just Rick going mad. And this episode's the most bombastic startup we've ever got for a season. They just immediately wrap up the Terminus arc and kind of set up the Hunter arc, which is only a few episodes. But overall, it's a very, very fun episode. And it is really, really good start for an overall one of the best seasons of The Walking Dead Season 5. Because our characters do so much in this small episode. They escape Terminus. We have so much character progression for certain characters. Characters meet up again. It's so good. And it had to be on this list just because it's the best season opener we've ever got. Here we are at number 1. And the best episode of The Walking Dead, in my opinion, is Season 9, Episode 5. Rick's final episode. And this episode had a lot to do. This episode had to be the episode that got rid of Rick Grimes. So this episode could have been like a Carl episode, Season 8, Episode 9, and everyone hated it. But no, this episode is so good because of how they respected getting rid of Rick in such a good way. This was a very good farewell. They took their time to do this. It wasn't like, oh, Rick signed us this, get rid of him now. No, they made sure to write a conclusion for Rick and a very good story where our characters can move on without him. And in this episode, Andrew Lincoln is at peak form. He is carrying this episode, making it so good. Like, he knows it's the last episode. He's going to give it his all. And you can tell he's given it his all throughout this entire episode. And we get to see so many old faces, which are amazing. We get to see Shane again. We get to see Herschel again. We get to see all these characters that played a big part in Rick's life. The only one issue with this episode is that Sasha doesn't really make much sense, and during that scene it should have really just been Laurie or Carl to be the person to talk to Rick at that point in time, not Sasha. But overall, this episode is just such a good way to say farewell to Rick. And another thing that gets very much overshadowed in this episode is the Maggie and Negan interaction that we get in this episode. And we get the thing where Maggie realizes that Negan is better to be left alive than be murdered. And the performances from those two actors is really good too. So even the subplot in this episode is absolutely fantastic. This episode, as I said, only has one flaw. And this is my list. So please tell me down below, what do you think about my list? And if you disagree with my top 10 favourite / best episodes of The Walking Dead, tell me your list down in the comments and make sure to give me a reason why they're your favourite episode as well down there. But if you want more Walking Dead content, please look on the screen. I do recommend you click on one of the videos that are showing right now because you'll find something else you like, guaranteed. And if you don't, come back here and tell me I just provide terrible content. I would like to know this so I can approve. But make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to help the channel. I keep updated with all things Walking Dead. 2 videos a week, every week. This is it for me today. So goodbye, peace out, and I'll talk to you at a later date.